This is the Wealth Junkie Show. Brought to you by CEO Capital Partners, Brendan Dukeman and Will Harvey. Your hosts deliver the daily fix you're looking for with exciting wealth-building secrets and strategies for what's working today. Listen to real-life stories straight from the mouths of some of the hottest, most successful entrepreneurs and financial freedom seekers to fuel your success addiction.
What's going on, junkies? It's Brandon Dukeman here with Will Harvey, and this is the Daily Wealth Junkie Show. Thanks for joining us again. We've got a great show in store for you. But first, before we get started, be sure to like our page on Facebook and also subscribe to our podcast so that way you won't miss a daily show. Will, why don't we get started? Who do we got in store today?
Yeah, thanks so much, Brandon. So today we have Ryan Narus on here. So he is a mobile home park owner and operator with used to be 9 mobile home parks, but he just closed on his 10th, and he has 1,245 units under his belt. He started with nothing, no money, no experience, no network, and he was in his 20s with a ton of student loan debt, no capital to invest, and he's self-described as just a normal dude. And he's just a hustler, refused to quit, and was working a corporate job. Now he has 5 employees. He works from home and escaped that whole rat race situation. And there's an awesome story behind that. So with that, Ryan, would love to hear about how you got started, your background, and what got you to where you are today.
Well, first and foremost, thank you guys for having me here. Y'all are rock stars, and I'm completely honored.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Much appreciated.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to sharing my story with your audience because I'm just a typical millennial. I just was force-fed the whole, go to school, get good grades, go to a good university, and there's going to be a job waiting for you. And then you do the job until you can retire on a beach somewhere. And it's like, well, not only is that not true, but it's like it's wildly inaccurate. Like I went to Wake Forest University twice, and both times there was no job waiting for me. I had to go and hustle until I found my job. Now, albeit I graduated in 2009, so that wasn't exactly the ideal time.
The economy was great then, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was like, dude, there was, I wanted to be in sales, and I was a psych major, stats minor, and I loved teaching people, and I loved selling. And so I was like, I meant to be in sales, and no one was hiring because I wanted to do B2B sales, and all the jobs that were out there were like, look, you need 5 years of experience and to be able to be effective immediately. Otherwise, we don't want to take you on. And I'm sitting here like, come on, man. Like, someone's got to take a chance on me. I think I would be really, really good at this. And long story short, my old karate instructor was a car sales manager. And he was like, what do you think about selling cars? And I was like, it's better than sitting at home with my mom. Not that I don't think the world of my mom. It's just like, dude, I can't have 5 years of experience sitting at home doing nothing. So it's like, I got to do something. And flash forward 4 years after that, I ended up selling well over 800 cars. I won a bunch of awards, wrote a book, and then was like, I'm stuck at this job because like I love selling. But the problem with selling cars and just commission sales in general is I sprained my ankle playing basketball once. I love basketball, and I'm not going to stop playing basketball. And I don't get paid sitting at home with ice on my ankle. So I had to go out and buy crutches and show up to work and trying to sell cars with crutches. And that's kind of when I realized, like, I don't want this. I don't want to, because in my 20s, it's not a big deal. But when I'm in my 60s, like early 60s, if I get hurt, I'm not going to be able to get paid. Right. And so I was like, not only do I not, like, I liked selling, but I'm not really into cars. So not only do I not want to continue to be in the automotive industry, but also even if I get promoted to the F&I desk, that's more hours, more stress. Yeah, more money, but is that really going to make me happy? More money and more time away from my family? And
Right.
Then what? Then you're a sales manager. Then you're a general manager. And, I was sitting down with my general manager and I asked him, I'm like, what do you regret about your life? And he was like, I make a lot of money. He told me how much he made. And it was a big, big number, annual number. And he's like, now I get Sundays off. So I'm still here on Saturdays. And he's like, I miss all sorts of sporting events that my kids are doing. And he's like, is it worth it? He's like, I'm proud about how much money I make and how well I do. But he's like, what you have to answer for yourself is, do you want to be in my shoes in 20 years, missing a chunk of your kid's life?
Wow. Yeah,
And
that's powerful.
and what I said is, I don't want that. You know what I want? I want to be the guy with the name, his last name on the side of the building, because that guy shows up in his Ferrari to celebrate when we win the zone and have a nice meal and get to shake people's hands and then go back to his wonderful home in Quail Hollow with like millionaires all around. Like, that's the guy who I want to be. So I was like, all right, let's figure out how to do that. I was like, clearly I need to be a business owner. So I looked at over 100 businesses. I tried to start 3 businesses. None of them went anywhere, and I lost money. Not a lot of money, but I started one with my best friend, one with my wife, and one on my own, and they went nowhere. And so I was like, all right, why don't we go back?
What were those businesses?
Sure. So one, I wrote a book, and I wanted to go on like a book tour. I ended up making $19.18 as of this recording, so you can still buy my book.
Well, what's the title of your book for our listeners?
We'll buy it and make it over 20.
It's called Car Deal Hacks. So if you literally just Google Car Deal Hacks Lean Pub, you can download it. I think I sold like 147 copies as of this recording, but I ended up spending like $200 on the website. So
you're in
but I mean, you know what? I wrote a book. Like, how many people say they want to write a book and didn't do it?
Right.
You know, and someone paid, a couple of people paid me for it. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, so I did that. My wife and I, she's a germaphobe. So she wanted to, she was disappointed at the market for shopping cart hygiene. So she loves, doing the grocery shopping on her own. She's a big cook, but she's like, she's a nurse. So she washes her hands like 80 million times a day. And so she's like, I don't like the fact that people don't wash their hands, then put their hands all over these shopping carts. So I'm going to craft an insert that we can put in here. It was a great idea, and it seemed like there was a market for it. But what we found through doing that was, if you're not passionate about it, you're going to quit as soon as you hit the first hurdle.
Yeah, makes sense.
And
that's so true.
And then my best friend and I, we tried to start a couple businesses, but our biggest one was we wanted to be, so this is going to sound ridiculous, but we wanted to start this thing called Bros Guide, which is, in retrospect, is ridiculous. And I'm glad that didn't go anywhere, but we're going to be like the Bros Guide to cities and talk about, you have a blog and maybe a podcast and a Twitter where we hype up for a price, obviously, various businesses and then rate them and and that
pay you for the exposure.
Exactly. And that turned into us having a couple of beers talking about something we'd never do. So I looked at and plenty of other businesses, and so then I was like, all right, I'm stuck at my job. Let's go get my MBA, because clearly that's the thing to do, right? You go get your MBA and then you transition into something else. And while I was getting my MBA, I bumped into Ian Tudor, my business partner, and he was like, we are clearly meant to be business partners. What do you think about mobile home parks? And I was like, I love the show Trailer Park Boys. So if it's like that, I'm very interested.
Is it like that?
Oh, dude, to a certain degree.
Okay.
To a certain degree. For the most part, mobile home parks are filled with people that are your neighbors, that go to church with you, that you see in the street, and you would never know it, because
there's good people.
School teachers who are single moms, guys going through divorces, people with 8 kids. And realistically, what are you going to do? Get a 3-bedroom apartment for $1,500 a month in Charlotte? Yeah, forget it. You know, you need the space, and you have a good job. So in other words, for the most part, these are good people. You would never expect.
Yeah, they just get that stigma of being gross and dirty because of the couple people who actually make it gross and dirty.
That being said, I've got plenty of hilarious stories, maybe for another day, because we're limited on time. I mean, people who are former CIA agents, to people who are just people who. I tell you what, we could make an entire episode on.
Why don't we do this? Like I said, why don't you give us the craziest story that you've ever had? Because that's. Yeah, let's hear
I will give you options and you tell me.
that. Okay.
All right, we can have the Iranian nuclear negotiator. We can have the lady who pooped her pants in court. We can have the person who threatened to kill me. We can have the guy who who was going to BRB, dude. I'm going to go delete my felony from my record, and then I'm going to apply and get in. I mean, dude.
Let's do the Iranian nuclear guy. That sounds pretty fascinating.
Dude, this was hilarious. There's just this guy who was just sending us these bizarre messages. You know, we bought this mobile home park, and when you buy properties that are crazy below rent, you have to raise the rent closer to market. So I don't think I'm over market in any of my communities, and I'm either at or slightly above them. So I'm not one of these guys who goes in and cranks rents up way crazy. That being said, if the market's 250 and you're at 170, I'm going to bump you to 200 or higher. And so this guy just was not exactly thrilled with that. And so he sent me this message that was just hilarious. I mean, it was like, hey, listen, I'm actually a wealthy former CIA agent, and I'm being used for consulting on the Iranian nuclear negotiation. So they're using me for that. And the only reason I'm in this mobile home park is because my neighbors are Iranian. And by the way, Mr. Gonzalez is not Iranian. So
that is so funny.
Here to spy on these guys. And then I don't know how, but James Comey and Hillary Clinton's emails gotten his message to me. And something called porn intelligence. No idea what that is, but I'm sure he has plenty of that. And then my favorite part of the email was he says he currently consults for not the FBI, but the FIB. I was like, I know you definitely do some consulting with FIB.
That is so funny.
So there's definitely a mixture.
That's hilarious. Wow.
There's definitely some trailer park boys.
Oh yeah, interesting. Sounds like it. Okay. So rewinding a bit. So I know we skipped ahead. We were talking about what you're doing now, but okay. So you were trying all these businesses. They weren't really working, and so you met your business partner? So then where were we?
Yeah, we were in Orlando, Florida. I was doing my internship in Miami between my first and second year of MBA, and my childhood friend. We grew up in the same neighborhood. I was really good friends with his older brother. He's really good friends with my younger brother, and we just kept in touch. And we were hanging out multiple times all summer because Orlando and Miami are, I don't know, like 4 hours away. So he'd come down and visit. I'd go up and visit, and we're just riding on these like city bikes in downtown Orlando, and I just hit us after talking about all the books we were reading and all the dreams we had, our professional goals and our charitable goals and everything. We're like, we have the exact same mindset, and we read the exact same books, and we have the exact same interests, and we have the exact same proclivity for having strong emotional intelligence. We're like, let's just be business partners. So then we're like, okay, it's a question of what? And then one of the first ideas was mobile home parks. So that we started that in July of 2015. So between my first and second year.
Yeah, but why mobile home? Because if I'm sitting down with my friend and we want to start a business, I mean, mobile home parks is not going to be what I would, what I would come up with as a business.
First and foremost, it fit me like a glove. So my life goal with charity is I want to, when I'm 80 years old, looking back on my life, I want to say I made the world a better place for having been here, in the regard that I think underprivileged kids do not have advantages that I have growing up, and I want to fix that. So I grew up with a learning disability, and my parents had the money and the patience to make sure I got my education. And I realized at a young age, if I did not have my parents, I would have probably wound up a criminal or a deadbeat. Wow. And all that intelligence and hardworking and positivity, all that potential would have gone to either crime or nothing. And I realized that there are kids that that's out of their control, who they were born with, what neighborhoods they grow up in. So I was like, if I'm in affordable housing, I can directly affect change. I can give people good, clean, safe housing, surround them with good neighbors, so their peer group hopefully has a chance to be pretty good. And then also I started a partial college scholarship, and I offer to pay for college applications. So I want these kids to go to school. So from that standpoint,
that's really cool.
If I was doing Class A office, like, could I do charity work in my spare time? Sure. But here's the thing. what I do professionally as a for-profit, I'm not a non-for-profit, as a for-profit business, is it directly affects exactly what I want to do with charity in my life. So that's a big part of it. But then also my skill set matches. So I'm a former car salesman, like I mentioned. I've got years of negotiation, persuasion, overcoming objections, marketing, a lot of operations, because a lot of car sales is delivering a car from start to finish as quickly and efficiently as possible, so you get a good survey, because your bonus is tied to your survey scores. So you don't have a choice but to be really efficient. I found I loved that, the operational standpoint. So operating mobile home parks, selling them, dealing with confrontation. The fun thing about car sales is people show up and they don't care who you are or what your charity is about, your life goals are about. They just see you as a scummy car salesman, period. And most of the time, folks show up to the car dealership ready to fight a car salesman.
Yeah,
so my goal is to take Brandon, you deal with this as a police officer. You have to de-escalate situations, and although you aren't incentivized financially to, like I am, to get a good survey to get your bonus, you still want to have de-escalate a situation and have those people walk away with a warm and fuzzy.
Yep,
Me,
absolutely.
because I want a good survey, but you, because you are here to protect and to serve the community. It's effectively what you do, right? De-escalating a situation, making it warm and fuzzy. When you are in eviction court and you are evicting people in my line of work, you have to be good at that, or you have to be able to hire someone who is good at that. And there's no better way to know if you're hiring the right person than if you already have that skill. So in other words, my skill set matched it perfectly, and my charitable goals matched it.
Yeah, that makes sense when you put it that
cool.
way. I mean, that's a pretty good answer to the question, I think.
Yeah. So from there, after you guys identified what you wanted to do, how'd you get started? How'd you get into your first deal? Where'd you go?
Yeah. So first order of business was he was in Orlando, I was in Miami, and we did a shared Google Doc together, and we just wrote out our entire business plan. So step one was, who are we and what do we want? Let's make a 6-month goal, a 1-year goal, a 5-year goal. Let's make it very specific. And the reason why we did that, step one, was because, like Steve Jobs says, the most important answers you give are, in so many words, you're going to be saying it's better to say no to things than it is yes to things. And even Warren Buffett's like that too. He's like, I'd say no to over 99% of the businesses I look at. And if you know who you are and what you want personally and from your career, you can then, some decisions become so much easier and so much more streamlined. So that was first and foremost our first order of business is, who are we? What do we want? How are we going to get there? Let's make it specific, but also, let's build in flexibility, because, random stuff is going to happen. And then we just went to work. I mean, we didn't, we started in July of 15. We closed our first deal in September of 16. So it took a long time. And then we didn't go full time until June of 17. So, I mean, it was almost a full 2 years before. So step one, we prove the concept works and we can make money at it. And then step two, make a huge sacrifice, because I had more student loan debt than cash to invest. I mean, I had a pathetic amount of money to start out, and I had no experience and no network. I had nothing. And so I realized to do that, I'd have to make a major sacrifice. And so what I ended up doing is, on our third deal, I just paid myself the property manager salary, and I was the physical property manager. And I lived on that property in a double wide every other week for 14 months. So, I mean, I did what no one else wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I made it. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask, where did you find the money and the network to be able to scale up in this business?
It took a lot of phone calls and outreach. And so the funny thing,
raising private money.
Yep.
Okay.
The thing of it is, for the listeners who haven't ever syndicated a deal before, it's not the first call that's going to get someone to invest with you. And of the people who've invested in across my 10 deals now, almost every single one of them I had known for years before we closed our first deal. With exception to one deal, it's one of those things where it just takes years to build trust, and it
That's
takes
right.
a lot of phone calls that go absolutely nowhere, and a lot of phone calls that never get returned, and some phone calls where people are really, really mean to you.
Yeah.
And folks, I have an amazing set of investors right now that make my life so easy. And it would be really easy to look at me and be like, oh, well, you have such and such, so they make your life easy. Yeah, well, what about the other hundreds of people I called
Right.
that never returned my call?
Who ignored you?
Yeah.
Right.
So how did you, was that discouraging for you to have those, hundreds and hundreds of people not call? And how did you kind of fight through that discouragement
Oh,
to
yeah, dude, totally. But remember, I sold cars for 4 years. I was
So
in
you're
yeah,
sales.
you're used to no and
Yeah.
being rude.
You get your butt, like, national average is like less than 30% closing ratio in the car industry, and I was closing around 40%, like on a
Wow.
good month, maybe closer to 50, like where I'm just a rock star, like around 50. So I mean, you're talking like best case scenario, every other person saying no to you.
That's a
So
lot of
it's like
no's.
it's a lot of no's, and the funny thing of it is, it's you get callous to it, and I'm glad, like, selling car. If I had gone to like Bank of America right out of undergrad and had like a crazy high paying job, dude, I am so glad I sold cars. Like, I made a decent salary, but if I had been making over 100 right out of the gate, and like some of my buddies did like iBanking, and they learned a lot, but the experience I got selling
Yeah.
cars was just so worth it, because that rejection that I just got used to, and it's almost like a game for me now. Like, Ian's a natural, my business partner Ian's a natural salesperson, so he naturally has like coping mechanisms. But if you don't have natural coping mechanisms, because I didn't, you eventually find a way. Like, for me, it's just like, I look at it like, if I call 10 people, let's see how many no's I can get today. So that way, when I get a no, or like, let's see how funny it can be for me when someone's just obviously being rude and going to hang up on me. Like, when I get rude, someone's rude to me and hang up on me, I'm going to call my buddy and be like, dude, you won't believe what this person said to me. Right.
So
So if you flip the
yeah.
way you perceive it and frame it, it can help you cope with rejection, because it's more than just getting rejected on investors. It's also getting rejected by brokers and rejected by direct outreach to owners.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. In my past life, I was in the mortgage business, and it's very, very similar. People will leave you over an eighth of a point on their rate and stuff like that, and they'll just, it's very disheartening. And I just what I got, how I got through that, getting a ton of rejections, a ton of no's when I was first getting started, was I just had this. It was almost like, okay, well, their loss. You know what I mean? That was how I got through it. And everybody has a different coping mechanism, but no, that's really good. And I agree that you kind of got to go through those trials and tribulations to really harden you and toughen you. And
Well, isn't it what's his name? The silly boxer guy, not the guy who bit Evander
oh yeah,
Holyfield's.
Mike
What's his
Tyson.
name? Mike Tyson has a great quote where he's like, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yep.
Yeah, that one right. Hold on, where is it?
Yes, there he is.
That's
Hey,
Yep.
yeah,
That's it.
dude, I love it.
Yeah.
So Brian, you were talking how you were kind of glad that you had the car salesman experience. What, if anything, would you do differently to, maybe speed up your success, or anything different that you would do?
Yes. So I actually talk about this on my podcast. I have an episode called Starting with Nothing.
Mm.
And I talk about how I did it. And honestly, there's not really a whole lot I would do differently going back. I would just do more of it. And I can distill everything I did into 4 buckets. So learning, networking, self-assessment, and sacrifice. So I'll briefly hit on these. So first and foremost, you got to learn. And that comes from your job. You may feel stuck at your job, like I did selling cars, especially towards the end, but I was gaining valuable skills
Absolutely.
that, even though I wasn't making the money I wanted to make, and even though I was working crazy hours and I hated, eventually felt stuck and I hated it towards the end, I was building extraordinarily valuable skills. So first and foremost, your job teaches you a lot more than you think it does. You got to pick up as many books as you can. I used to challenge myself to read 50 books a year, and I have stopped that. I'd be lucky if I read 10 this year, but I stopped that. I should get back into it, but I picked up anything I could read. And there are some things like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 4-Hour Work Week, Your Mind at Work, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Like some of these books are absolute must read books that will change the way you look at the world. The Millionaire Next Door will change the way you look at the world. And then you have to network. They say this is common knowledge. It's all about who you know. That's Everybody knows that.
Yep.
How many times be honest with yourself, listeners. Like, how many times have you just cold called someone because you think what they do is cool? I mean, I try to do that every single day. Yeah. Like, I don't care if you're a janitor or a CEO or anywhere in between. I want to get a hold of you because some of the best lessons I've learned in my life were from like secretaries, were from like unemployed people. Mm. And there are so many nuggets of wisdom out there. And if you're a connector of people, you will just start pumping value into people around you, and they will return it in droves. So you might help out 99 people that will never help you in any shape or form ever, but that one person will think the world of you and will either invest with you or pitch you out a deal or there's so many different ways they can help you. And then this is a huge thing. Self-assessment. You have to know who you are. And it is so easy to be like, I know myself. Come on. That's a soft skill that I already know myself. I will tell you this. I didn't know how much I loved coffee until I was about 28 years old. So there are things about yourself you don't know because you have never asked.
Right.
Well, and so how do you figure out some of those things?
It takes a lot of really difficult questions.
Okay.
Am I truly happy where I'm at? Do I really, am I just drinking the Kool-Aid where I'm at and protecting my ego by being like, oh, I just need to work a little bit harder so I can get that promotion? Or, hey, did I just spend 4 years sacrificing blood, sweat, and tears at a car dealership? Now I feel like I don't want to sell cars ever again. Like, did I just waste 4 years of my life? That was a really tough question I had to answer myself. So then that way, when Ian and I have that phone call in July of 2015, where we map out what we want in our lives, we've already spent years asking ourselves really difficult questions and then breaking down these like ridiculous stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and really humbling ourselves, being like, you know what? I'm not that great. I'm not that great. I'm not that smart. I'm not that hardworking. I'm not that talented. Great. Now that I've acknowledged that, let's build a self-esteem and a plan for our lives based on a real foundation. And then the last thing is sacrifice. And for me, that was, quitting my job and paying myself like less than half of what I was making in corporate America and literally living in a mobile home with, next door to little Miss Janice, who wanted to complain to me about anything and everything. And you know what? Miss Janice is a little sweetheart and I love her to death, but
I'm sure Miss Janice got old after a while.
She did. And you know what? Driving around and handing out notices and being like, look, guy, you haven't paid your rent. You can't be mad at me for evicting you because you haven't paid. You signed on this lease that said you would pay. And if you didn't pay by now, I was going to evict you. So how is it my fault that you haven't paid? Right. Like, right. People think that's beneath them and want to hire a third-party management company. And there is so much. If there's one thing, Brandon, to directly answer your question, if there's one thing I really wish I had known when I started, it's that your underwriting is garbage in, garbage out. It gets better the better your assumptions are. And if you live it, like I'm literally doing this podcast interview in one of my mobile home parks right now. Right. If you live it and you are not afraid to do the dirty work yourself, not saying that, I have employees. It's not like I do everything myself. If you live it, you will understand the business that you are in from the ground up. If you literally live and you consume your own product, like I lived in my own mobile home park, you will understand your own product from the ground up. Your assumptions will be better. And when your assumptions are better than your competition, there will be deals in front of your face that all of a sudden no one else sees. I'll give you a great example of that. Countryside Mobile Home Park. I have people who listen to my podcast who reach out and they're like, wait, you own Countryside? I could have bought that for less than you did. I'm like, why didn't you? They're like, oh, well, the collections issues, the park on homes, the lift station, the roads. It's like, dude, that that property is probably worth close to 3 times what I bought it for, because I slept on the property when I had to, because I was my own property manager. I did, I went to the local iglesias and the local restaurantes and handed out my flyer that I now know had tons of grammatical errors in it in my broken Spanish, but the Spanish people didn't care. Like, I did the dirty work. I underwrite better now, and I don't miss deals that are right in front of my face anymore. So if you're listening in, those are my 4 things I would tell anyone: is learning, networking, self-assessment, and sacrificing. And then my game-changing advice for new folks is go live it. Because when you live it, your assumptions are better. And when your assumptions are better, you don't miss deals right in front of your face.
Wow.
That's like,
that's true.
That's awesome.
I hear you. You're doing it. You're living it. You see it. And, that's what it's all about.
Yep.
So, all right, Ryan, now we're going to move into our segment here we call Moments of Truth. These are the 7 questions that we ask all of our guests here. I'm just going to kick it off. Who's your success role model?
Oh, I have a lot, but if I had to pick one, it'd probably be my friend Mike Conlon. He has the lifestyle that I want. He owns over 5,000 mobile home pads. He's the sole owner of the majority of them. And I tell him this, I'm like, when I grow up, I want to be like Mike. And I interviewed him on my podcast, and he just is a brilliant guy who does a ton of charity work. And I have a lot of role models and a lot of mentors, but if I had to pick one, it would probably have to be my buddy Mike.
Very cool.
Very cool. What's your biggest success?
I mean, personally or professionally? Because personally, it's got to be the birth of my son.
Let's do both.
Yeah, personally, it's the birth of my son. I mean, let's do a 2-for-1 here.
Okay.
Like Ricky would say from Trailer Park Boys, let's get 2 birds stoned at once. Instead of kill 2 birds with one stone. I love Trailer Park Boys. My son was born premature. So this recording is in September of 2019. My son was born in early July 11th. And he was due on August 31st. So like a week ago.
Wow.
So he was born almost 2 full months early. And I remember driving back from one of my properties in Spartanburg back home to Charlotte, and I got a call from my mother-in-law, and she's like, "Ryan, please don't freak out." And I was like, "Miss Cindy, I need you to know that if you want me to freak out, that's how you get me to freak out." It's like the show Archer. He's like, Do you want me to freak out? Because that's how you get me to freak out.
Right.
And so she's like, Jennifer is in the hospital, but it's okay. It's not a big deal. She's stable. And I'm like, I'm on the way. So that was at 3 p.m. on a Monday. And I went right there, and she just looked a mess when I got there. And they pumped her full of this thing called magnesium sulfate, which basically stops contractions. And we did our best. He was born on that Thursday. So we basically pumped her full of all sorts of drugs for 4 days. And then when my son was born, he had to stay in the NICU for about 16 days. So we're talking about a whole month.
Wow.
And if you were to ask me professionally and personally, what is my biggest success? I would say it's not, getting my black belt in karate. It's not self-taught Spanish. It's not going full-time in my own job or closing this deal. It's being there for my wife and my son when they needed me the most. I was there every night. I spent the night there at the hospital with my wife. I was there by her side. Ian, my business partner, was like, I got this. You do what you got to do. So for a whole month, I effectively didn't work. And we have our employees in place. We have Ian in place. We have systems in place where I don't have to take PTO. I don't have to take a leave of absence. I don't have to worry about getting passed over on a promotion. My business generates me passive income now. And I have employees and people in place who will run my business for me when I am not there. Now, albeit my business will not grow without me. It is sustainable without me. And I got to say, the biggest joy I've ever felt in my life was holding my son in my arms.
Wow.
And I've made a lot of money in real estate, but if you were to be like, hey, I'll pay another $100,000 a year to go and work a corporate job above what you're making right now, so a nice chunk of change, dude, no thanks. to have the ability to work for myself and be there when my family needed it during an emergency. It almost brings me to tears thinking about it. So for those of you listening in, I have to say, if you're a family person like I am, you need to fight and find a way to break excuses, because your family is counting on you to be there for them in those moments. And there's no better way. Like my general manager told me, his biggest regret in life after making all of that money and continuing to make all that money is missing soccer games and baseball games and stuff. And I'm in a position in my life where I can still make good money. And even if I didn't, I'm not missing those right. Soccer games, those moments.
Yeah. If you were still selling cars, you would have missed that opportunity to be in that hospital. So right. That's awesome. So what do you think your biggest failure is so far?
Oh, tons, man. I could give you tons of failures. And I think rather than zooming in on one, so like we could talk about Cherry Valley, where we didn't check the water bills and it turned out we were losing $20,000 to the ground, and we were rattled with $100,000 plus infrastructure bill, and it's still going up. Although I think allegedly we fixed it. I mean, we could talk about that. We could talk about the lift station at Countryside. We could talk about me missing on deals because either I didn't call the people back or this, that, or the other thing. But I think the bigger lesson there isn't individual failures. I think failure in general, if you have a strong sense of who you are and what you want in this life, and you can unequivocally say, what do I want to be when I grow up and how am I going to get there? It makes decision making that much easier, and it makes awful days where you're just raw. Like another great example, I lost like $4,000 buying a home that fell apart and we couldn't even move it. That was awful. Or like the one time where I hired the wrong plumber and Miss Joyce at Dogwood had sewage running down the street by her home, and she was sitting in her chair next to sewage running down by her. And I was like, and she looked at me and she's like, oh yeah, that does that sometimes. And it's done that for years. And that broke my heart because she is like one of the sweetest ladies I've ever met. And I was like, Miss Joyce, I have failed you. And the fact that you look at this sewage, like the old ownership too basically didn't fix it or didn't address it right, like that breaks my heart, and you don't deserve that. So I mean, there's a ton of like individual moments we could talk about, but for the listeners, you need to develop grit, because I can point to so many people I've met in my life that are way smarter than I am, way harder working than I am, way more talented than I am, that do not have what I have because they quit. So it's not about individual failures. It's about having the courage to take a big risk, make a big sacrifice. And when you lose, because you will lose, you get up and you keep going.
And you learn from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. What's your favorite quote?
Well, hey, the Mike Tyson one is pretty awesome, but probably my favorite quote is Oscar Wilde. And he has this line that I love. He says, if you want to tell someone the truth, make them laugh. Otherwise, they'll kill you. So for me, I love incorporating humor in everything I do. My corporate culture. So the Archimedes group, one of big tenet in our corporate culture is roasting each other, including ourselves. So never take yourself too seriously, because one beautiful thing about humor is it allows you to deliver really, really difficult messages in a very palatable way. So if I'm doing something wrong and one of my employees calls me up and they're like, Ryan, you screwed this up again. How are you in this position? You're worthless. And then we start laughing. Then it's easier for me. Not that
right.
I as a former car salesman, I've had much worse things about me said. We can laugh at that.
Right.
And like if Ian will call me up and be like, dude, you bought a home that we now lost $4,000. How did you get that credit card? Like, dude, you're worthless. Right. And then we laugh and we trash each other. Like I trash him. I'm like, yeah, it's almost like, a professional accountant on the team doesn't want to do the accounting. So he signs it to the guy who's a statistician and a salesman. So like we rip on each other. It's great. Yeah. So I would say that. And then also for, in eviction court, a lot of times telling jokes, when someone's getting evicted, not roasting them, but like telling a joke about anything lightens the mood and makes really sad situations. Like with Miss Joyce, I was telling you about the sewer running by, sewage running down her street. like to be able to joke with her and make light of a situation, but also be there to do the right thing.
Sure.
Like, I love that quote.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Awesome. Ryan, what are some of your hobbies outside of mobile home parks?
Well, I'm self-taught in Spanish. I love that. I love NFL football. Absolutely love the Carolina Panthers. They're my favorite team. And I know that my wife will roll her eyes when she listens to this and is like, I can't believe you said that. But I love Pokemon Go, and I'm at level 39. So if you want to take on my Rhydon or my Metagross, dude, bring it.
That's funny. Is that the one where they're the virtual? They're like, yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, they got the Pokestops and stuff like that, right?
Pokemons hang out at the mobile home parks.
Unfortunately, there's no Pokestops or gyms at any of my mobile home parks, which is a bummer.
Yeah, that is.
But when I walk my properties, I definitely am catching some Pokemon. So I'm a big Pokemon fan.
Cool.
So I still have some really dorky aspects to my personality.
That's funny. Okay, what's the best business book that you've read?
Oh, hands down, 4 Hour Workweek. That was game changer. I mean, if you're having trouble self-assessing and going, who am I at heart? Or even if you're like, I think I know myself really well, read that book. I mean, it will change. That book fundamentally made me realize I was stuck at the car dealership and that I needed to quit and that I needed to be okay with the fact that I invested years into my life that will now possibly count as nothing. But if I don't do that I'm going to continue to be unhappy. So there's a ton of books I could recommend, but that is by far and away the number one business book I'd say read.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's a great one.
And Ryan, I think you kind of answered this question a little bit earlier, but I'll ask it again. If there's one key piece of advice you could leave our listeners with about achieving success, what do you think it would be?
Well, I'll reiterate again, network, learn, self-assess, sacrifice, and your assumptions, your pro formas are only as good as your own assumptions. And if you are humble enough to go and make a big sacrifice and go live it like I did, you will get fundamentally better at underwriting. So you are missing deals if you don't. But I mean, if I was to give something that I hadn't already said, I mean, it's just that, look, it's a marathon and you have to go into it like Heidi Halverstedt. I think she's Stanford University psychologist. She has a book called Motivation, which is incredible. And she basically says the people who survive and who succeed are the people who say, not who say, oh, this is easy, I'm going to do it. Or this is too hard, I'm not going to do it. It's the people who go, I'm going to do it, but it's going to be really hard. So I will basically piggyback off that advice. If you want this, it's going to take years. It's going to take sacrifice. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to get rejected. It's going to suck. And it's going to be really hard. But you can do it. And don't let other people who are less talented than you and less hardworking than you and not as smart as you have everything you've ever wanted because they realized it was hard and they went out and did it and you didn't.
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay. So wrapping up, what are some of the wants and needs that you have for Archimedes Group and just anything else that you have going on?
Oh, yeah. So first and foremost, we're always looking for new deals.
Okay.
We like everybody who isn't looking for a new good deal, right? But beyond the obvious, I'm constantly looking for people to meet. I'm a connector. I love connecting people. I love meeting new people. I have learned some of the most valuable lessons in my life from folks who may never do anything cool with their lives. And I've also have the honor to sit down with people like former CEO of Pepsi, Steve Reineman. I've spoken with Rosalind Brewer of Sam's Club, Christine Duffy of Carnival Cruise Lines. And I've learned some amazing things from those amazing folks.
Wow.
But if you are listening in, I don't care where you are in life. I would love to talk to you. Please reach out to me. I would love to know who you are, where you came from, where you're at, where you're wanting to go. If I can help you or connect you with someone or do anything for you. My big thing, my biggest pain point right now is I feel like I don't meet enough people. Like I said earlier, it's all about who you know.
That's right. Well, with that said, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, my website's called archimedesgrp.com for Archimedes Group. I do not expect you to know how to spell Archimedes. It's really hard.
We'll put it in the show notes.
But my name is Ryan Narus. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm an open door. I pretty much accept anybody who wants to connect with me. Narus, and like Nancy, Google me. I'm the first thing to show up. And like I said, reach out to me on LinkedIn or on my website. Let's set up a call. If you're here in Charlotte, North Carolina, we can grab coffee if you want. Don't expect anything in return. Some of the best conversations I've had were from folks I never expected to ever learn anything from. So I'm as warm of an intro as you could expect.
Awesome.
Well, junkies, that wraps things up for today. You've heard what Ryan has to say about creating success, and you know what it takes now. Just remember, follow us on Facebook, join our group at facebook.com/groups/wealthjunkies. And don't forget to subscribe to the show to not miss any daily episodes of the Wealth Junkies show. Ryan, thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.
Guys, honored to be here. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
You've been listening to the Daily Wealth Junkies Show, brought to you by CEO Capital Partners. CEO Capital Partners works with business owners and executives to build passive income through multifamily apartment syndications. For more information about how you can invest in quality multifamily real estate assets and build significant streams of passive income, visit us today at ceocapitalpartners.com.